Elon Musk posing with all his fingers like this, and Ronaldo with his fingers like this during an interview.
So it means that the person is very confident about their thoughts, which is why people want to show that confidence will always hold their hands like that, right?
There is so much powerful language beyond words, which is used by highly trained professionals throughout the world and even intelligence bureaus like FBI. Well, we are talking about body language. We have a special guest. She has been trained directly under Joe Navarro, the retired FBI special agent. Please allow me to welcome the award-winning body language specialist, Khyati Bhatt.
On the face, you can put no less than 6,000 to 8,000 different expressions. Even the shaking of the foot, the tapping of the foot, how that foot is placed on the other foot, all that tells you a lot about what's happening in a person's mind.
Biting nails. People, of course, feel that it's being nervous. So, is it entirely true? Starbucks में perfume लगाना employees को allowed नहीं है. Why? Because you don't get that coffee smell to the customers. It gets mixed with the perfumes. Apple products like that airtight component of their boxes is make you feel anticipated.
So they make you purchase based on all this, right? Like the wafer, when it breaks, every wafer has to break in exactly make the same sound.
Correct.
A new car, exactly that same smell has to come from every car. You know, that is also all non-verbal communication. And we work with the Special 26. A lot of them protect VVIPs. When they enter into a room, in a split second, they have to be able to know whether this person is friend or foe.
We have something really interesting for the audience, which is decoding body language live.
Okay.
So I have a couple of footages which I'm going to show you. The first one being Nikhil Kamath with PM Shri Narendra Modi. There's another one which is MS Dhoni's interview. How to show confidence or how to fake confidence using body language. How can you detect lies, which is the most honest part of the body? What if I tell you that you are saying a lot even without saying a word? What if I tell you that you can understand how someone is feeling without them saying a word? There is so much powerful language beyond words, which is used by highly trained professionals throughout the world, including businessmen, professionals, CEOs, politicians, and even intelligence bureaus like FBI. Well, we are talking about body language. And to dive deep into the world of body language and non-verbal communications, we have a special guest who has worked with senior leaders from companies like Google, Discovery, Adani, Wipro, Panasonic, and even elite forces of Indian military. She has been trained directly under Joe Navarro, the retired FBI special agent. Please allow me to welcome the award-winning body language specialist, Khyati Bhatt.
Arjun, thank you so much for inviting me.
How are you, ma'am?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Great, thank you. How was your journey today here?
Oh, great. Fabulous. Always love traveling. I think it's a great way of just, observing people on the street. Something I just love doing. So, yeah.
So, ma'am, a very warm welcome on Voices of Impact. This is a very special podcast for me because as I've described you earlier already, let me describe to the audience as well. I've read a book from Joe Navarro, which is, just I explained, the ex-retired FBI agent. And I was so much enthralled by body language. Then I thought that, okay, let me find someone Indian like yourself, like who can also put some Indian version of body language into it. So, of course, this is a very, brain stimulating podcast for me. So, thank you so much for being here, first of all.
Looking forward, Arjun. Thank you.
So, I've already explained a bit about yourself, but would you like to describe a bit more into it? Like whatever you do, like you have a foundation or startup that is simply Body Talk. So, if you want to very quickly elaborate what you do.
Sure. So, as a person, I think I'm a learner. That's how I will stay for the entire life of mine. I also observe a lot. So, learner and observer is how I would describe myself. I began the journey into the world of body language in 2013, which is when I set up Simply Body Talk, learning with my teacher, Joe Navarro. That was, I think I read a lot of books like you. And after that, I realized that this is the one book that, you can just keep reading, and there's just so much that you can discover every time. So that's when I thought this is the right teacher to learn from. So I think I followed up quite a lot before he agreed to teach me. After that, there was no looking back. I mean, body language has been a passion of mine since my college days, and I just loved observing people. So we started out, and see, the problem is when you love a subject, you don't know how you can continue loving it, but how do you turn it into something that can be a business for you, right? So
Correct.
the journey began by just doing a few coaching assignments, doing some open format workshops. Then we got our first corporate workshop, which was with the senior most team in a corporate. We went international physical presence in Europe in 2018. Then I set up a company for children, Q Kids, which again was in 2019. We work globally with different children. Again, the idea being how can kids use body language the day they start learning communicating, because I'm sure we'll discuss how verbal and non-verbal communication are an integral part of who you are as a person. So
So do you ever feel like pressurized being yourself an body language expert? क्या मतलब आप भी ऐसे पॉडकास्टिंग में बैठे हैं, कोई इंटरव्यूज में बैठे हैं, तो कभी ऐसा एक्स्ट्रा प्रेशर रहता है कि लोग जज कर रहे हैं, लेट मी बी माई सेल्फ, और इज इट नाउ लाइक अ यूज्ड टू थिंग फॉर यू?
So I think, see, we have to just understand that body language is something you use to connect with people, right? So as a person, I think I love using my hands from the beginning, not because I have learned body language. So now somebody comes and tells me, oh ma'am, please control your hand gestures. And it's a little difficult to say control your body language, right? So what we can do is form habits that come with time. And that's just about it. So like me, if I'm sitting in and just talking about a subject, I would just like to go with the flow. So for example, if you see your seating and my seating, I was observing when we just started out, right?
Okay.
Very similar to each other. So it's kind of a mirroring posture that it shows that these people have probably built some rapport before the show began, or in general. So things like that broadly I do look at, but then in the flow, when you are talking or conversing with somebody, you really want to just see how you can maintain that connect with the person. So if I feel you're not getting it, I might just amp up my expressiveness to get across to you, or I would take pauses to allow you to speak up, like
Correct.
most of us do. So
wow, crazy. That surely did made me a little nervous, but but a lot of people, I guess, are confused between body language and non-verbal behaviors. Non-verbal behaviors, I believe, is a bigger umbrella.
right.
So would you like to expand this body language into this bigger umbrella?
Okay. So, see, non-verbal communication by itself, it's even a little broader than non-verbal behavior, right? So, non-verbal communication is everything where all your senses are integrated. For example, we are sitting in the studio, the sofa, how wide it is, or the ambience of the whole place. So all that is also non-verbal communication. There are so many brands who will do that jab chip break hota hai, like the wafer, when it breaks, every wafer has to break in exactly make the same sound.
Correct.
A new car, exactly that same smell has to come from every car. That is also all non-verbal communication. Coming to non-verbal behavior, so behavior is when it involves humans. Like how do you behave, how do you come across to people. Usme there are broadly different categories, but broadly, because we are putting words out of the equation when we say non-verbal, verbal is your words. So when you leave the words out of the equation, baki ka jitna bhi bachta hai, that is all non-verbal communication. Obviously body language is a big part of it, because hum jab body bolte hai to sirf face aur haath to hota nahi hai, right? It's the
Correct.
whole body, like we will I'm sure discuss today.
Correct.
But apart from that, your voice is also playing a role, right? So how you are intonating, where are you pausing, when do you start using your fillers, all that is also a part of the non-verbal communication. So ये broad category है. Obviously there are other things also, like you could have chosen 10 words to speak. Why do you
Mm-hmm.
choose certain words and not other words? So that also is somewhere being analyzed if you professionally look at it. I think in India we all anyways consider ourselves professionals because रास्ते में भी अगर कोई बात कर रहे हैं तो उसने मुझे ये चीज ऐसे बोली थी, right? That we keep saying
We are even doctors.
all the time. Correct. So थोड़ा सा ये है that we all are looking at much more beyond just somebody's facial expressions to understand where they are coming from. So that all comes under the category of non-verbal behaviors.
But that was a very interesting point that you made. आपने बोला there is a non-verbal communication or non-verbal behaviors. There is a very interesting difference because I was when I was in UK and मेरा एक friend था वो जो Starbucks में work कर रहा था and what he told me कि Starbucks में perfume लगाना employees को allowed नहीं है. Why? Because you don't get that coffee smell to the customers.
Yes.
Or it get mixed with the perfumes.
Right.
So तभी when you said about the non-verbal communication, that made me strike that okay, that's the first impression that people make. Also, I've seen a very good reel on Apple products, like that airtight component of their boxes. It's make you feel anticipated, might rise dopamine a bit.
Right.
So that is also non-verbal communication. That was a very interesting point that you made.
So they make you purchase based on all this, right? In fact, we use it even in business communications. Like you order coffee. I'm sure if you've looked up some sales training videos at any point in your time, you will know that when you feel that the client is ready to make a purchase, whether they know it through the words or through their body language, the coffee gets ordered. Why? Because when you drink coffee, it just releases the right biological substances in your body. I don't want to go into the names. That is why I pause there. And it makes you purchase better. Even in wine stores, depending on which type of wine you want to buy, the music will play accordingly. So if it's more of the classical musics, you will go for a more classical kind of wine. So they just upsold you by putting in the right kind of music. So that's how it works.
So when we compare this normal human behavior with the non-verbal cues that we give to another, how much actually is that non-verbal percentage of cues, if you can put it and quantify?
Okay, so there is this very famous misquoted statistics out there which says 7% is words, 35% is your voice, and 55% is your body language. That's actually misquoted out of something the scientists had actually put out for something very different. But that being said, when we look at body language and even let's put the voice also in, so non-verbal communication, out of the entire communication that you and I might be doing, anywhere from 50% to sometimes even 100% is your non-verbal communication. You ask any child who comes back home, मम्मा को एक बार देखा और पता चल गया कि आज मुझे कुछ शैतानी नहीं करना है, right? So that kid is not even talking to the mother, but he picks up that signal from the behavior or the demeanor of the mother. So that's 100% of the communication coming in from the body language. You talk to, you catch two office colleagues talking to each other. अभी बॉस को परेशान नहीं करना है. I think he is very caught up in something. Better wait it out till he is in a better mood because I want to talk about my leave. So अभी पूछेंगे तो मना कर देंगे. How do you get that sense? It's not that the boss is directly talking to you. You just get a sense from the way he is behaving or the tone in which he is talking to somebody else. So these are all cues that I think we all are picking up all the time. So we rely anywhere from again 50% to up to 100% on your non-verbal cues.
So without knowing ourselves, we all know a bit of body language that our mind processes, but we just don't realize it. Correct. When I was reading this book from Joe Navarro, for the audience, let me name it. It is named
What Everybody is Talking.
What Everybody says.
saying,
What everybody is saying. So that book really starts with the psychological connection with the body language. And the one thing that really impressed me or kept me thinking is how we connected our ancient behaviors with the current body language. And one of those was flight, fight, and freeze response.
Correct.
I would hand it over to you now.
Right. So, it's not just primitive communication. You have to just understand that body language was a communication that we started out with before we started using language. Just to put some interesting statistics behind it, 3 to 4 million years back is when your body started communicating with each other, and around 100,000 years is as recent as how we are using language to communicate.
Wow.
Right? So in terms of development of your brain, the instinctive brain is the second that got developed. First one is obviously the one that keeps you functioning, your breathing and your heart rate and all of that, right? So that's your stem. And after that comes the limbic brain. That's the one that's the most interesting, because it is primitive in nature. Even today, we have a lot of words, we have this developed brain which can be creative, it can be manipulative, but when it comes to your instincts, your body language will react even before you get to know about it. So for example, if I ask you that, Arjun, do you get it, or did you get the answer? And before you say a yes or a no, your body language will have already told me what the answer is. So that's how instinctive it is. And yes, we developed it years back. Today I get this asked a lot, that how relevant is it in today's time, because we are going so digital, and we have the language that's developed to such a large extent. But all that being said, see, how we use body language is in two ways. One is when we want to communicate something that's on our mind. So we are consciously or unconsciously making that effort to communicate using our body, right? So that bit, maybe some of us are more expressive, some of us are less expressive. It could be person specific, it could be culture specific, but that instinctive part, the one that you named, that is something you cannot control.
Correct.
Right? So how does this instinct works? It works exactly like you said. The first one is to freeze, the second one is to flight, the third one is to fight. So for example, if I saw that there's something in the environment that's going to make me feel less comfortable, or I don't know what's going to happen.
Dangerous.
Yes. So maybe when I walked into the studio today, before I opened it, I would not know what is the setup inside, right? So I would be a little on my alert. If there was something that I was not expecting, before I start running away or going away from there, first response is going to be freeze response. That means I will just not want to move, so that I'm not making anything alert inside, because it could be dangerous for me. This is
Staying
just the way.
Unnoticed.
Correct. So freeze is what helps us to not get noticed.
Correct.
Again, you might have seen that, when somebody asks a question, those who feel I don't know the answer to it, they will just stop moving. Because if you move, you catch the attention of the person who asked the question. So you might just not, move at all. And that's the freeze response at work.
Yeah. Correct. So I want to get into some faking body language as well, but let's just keep it to the end of the podcast, because let's first introduce the publicly known body language cues. Like, that might be true or that might be misconceptions, but they're very common cues, like biting nails and so on and so forth. But let's just start with biting nails. People of course feel that it's being nervous. So is it entirely true?
To a certain extent it is, because what happens is when you bite your nails, it puts you in contact with your skin. So in your skin are a lot of these chemicals that when you rub them, it makes you feel better. So when you hug a child, or you hug your loved one, or you do that perfect handshake, or you rub and you put your hair away, all of that in some way is contact with your skin. To that extent, nail biting is also a similar kind of a response, that you are biting so that you are trying to comfort yourself.
Correct.
Now, a lot of us feel that it's habitual, right? Not just the nail biting, there are others also. Like somebody will say that, fiddling with your ring, yeah, but that I do it habitually. So how can you say that that's me being nervous? It's not like that. It's one of your pet responses, like your go-to action that you take when you feel a little more nervous. So nail biting is something similar, that when something is making you feel anxious, the first thing you respond to or you go to is biting your nails.
Correct.
Now, it's something that we also used to judge people. Why? Because it's permanent. You can see it on somebody.
Correct.
Now, if I were, just doing that, fiddling with my ring when I feel nervous, you can't see it when I'm not doing it, right? So to that extent, we do use these kind of behaviors to judge people around us. Should not be done that way, but unfortunately, stereotyping is something that has helped us to, respond faster to things that are unknown. So getting rid of those stereotypes takes a lot of time, practice, and effort.
Correct. Moving on, we have another one, which is the crossing of the arms, which makes you feel like you are more defensive than you are.
Yeah, so crossed arms, I think you talk about body language. First thing that comes up is probably the handshake, second is eye contact, and the third on the list, most definitely, is the crossed arms. So everybody feels crossed arms is close to the other person. Why do we feel like that? Because when I do that, it's bringing in a barrier between you and me. That barrier is something that will keep you from attacking me. If you are going to attack me, it can be verbally, it can be physically, it can be emotionally, whatever it be, right? So I am just trying to make sure that I am at least one distance away from you. That I could do with a lot of things. Maybe the mic is helping me, or maybe if I have a jacket, I might just pull it closer, right? To that extent, a lot of other things also help you to create that distance. So coming back to crossed arms, yes, one of the reasons why you might cross your arms is because you want to create that distance between you and the other person. But there are 100 other reasons why you might want to do that. For example, the simplest is you're feeling cold and you want to just shrug inwards and put that there. You go to photographers, they will tell you that we want a broader frame, we want the shoulders to be more prominent. That is why we ask people to stand like that, putting up that macho kind of a frame.
Correct.
You go to any bar and there are these bouncers standing outside. They are just trying to make themselves look bigger and taller and more powerful, so that if anybody is trying to create some nuisance around, they will be a little careful over there. So there are lots of different reasons why we cross our arms. The right way to approach body language is to look from top to bottom. Look at what we call as a cluster. Cluster means you put together different things in the body that you are seeing, put it together, and then see what is the actual meaning or message that the body is communicating to you. The place where it falls apart is when you see something that shows you, oh, this person looks very comfortable right now. But at the other end, you feel, but this particular body language is showing that they are uncomfortable. Then you start looking at the discomfort. So let me put it into perspective using just your crossed arms example. Okay. Say I'm seated like that. I'm relaxed and I'm, I even have a neck tilt. I'm listening to you. Sorry. So that's me just trying to fold up my hands so that I don't use my hands and I give you all my attention. So my entire body is showing you the same thing, that I am comfortable. I'm not moving around much. My neck tilt is showing you that I'm listening to you. I'm nodding back at you. Good eye contact. So that entire cluster is telling you that this person is interested in conversing with me. Hence, they have kept their hands like that so that they can focus on what I am saying. The same thing, for example, you asked me a question and I don't agree with what you're saying, and I do that and I sit like that. Now the cluster is me not looking directly, but putting my chin inwards, putting a slight frown on my face, and not just keeping my hands crossed, but even shrugging my shoulders inwards. So that entire cluster together will tell you this person is not very comfortable. So you can't just look at one thing, plug it out, and then try and see that, okay, this body language means so and so, hence I understood the person. Then obviously you are getting it wrong, and that's why it goes under the category of being misconceptualized or not understood well.
So basically, when someone processes this stereotypes and judges someone with just one body language cue, whether it be nail biting, whether it be crossed arms or eye contact or handshake, that is actually dangerous. Because you are maybe misinterpreting someone else. Am I right when I'm saying this?
Yes, absolutely correct. Okay. And at the same time, you also have to put into perspective what they are saying versus what they are showing. Both of that is also very important. For example, if you are telling me you disagree and your body language is also telling me you disagree, then it's easy for me to understand. But when your words are saying something else and your body language is saying something else, then obviously I have to rely on the body language. Now when I'm relying on your body language, but I'm not seeing the right parts of the body to understand, I am getting it totally incorrect. I'll go and, make decisions based on what I thought you are communicating, but you are not communicating that, and then I will be in trouble. So that's why understanding body language in the right manner is absolutely important.
Let me squeeze in between my guest experiences from the conversation that we are having. I was shooting with a guest, let me not name him. But when I was asking certain questions, he used to feel discomfort. That's what I sensed. What I've noticed was he was regularly like crossing his arms, like it was not really cold, but he was like this and going like this. So, uh, am I correct when I because I read this book, and what I learned at the end, it said that don't judge someone by a few cues. That's what we discussed. But there were so many cues, but with the hands, with the hands, not any other body language part, but with the hands, he was giving me so many signals as he's feeling discomfort. Am I right when I'm judging multiple signals with the same body organ?
Okay. So, Arjun, here, when you are describing this and I'm trying to visualize it, you are actually trying to understand the person. I don't think you have that intention to judge the person because you are in the chair of the host and that person is a guest on your show. So, I'm sure your intention would be to understand where the person is uncomfortable. Is it the seating? Is it the light? Is it the question? Is it that you are, somewhere cross-examining the answer that he gave? As long as the intention is that I want to be able to connect, understand where you are coming from, and hence use body language to build that bridge and take forward that relationship. It's absolutely the best thing to do, right? I'll give you an example. I had gone to one of the shows where we were doing consulting for it was a psychological thriller. Okay. Now it was the day of script reading. Everybody was there. The actors were there. They were all reading out their parts. Now in script reading, that was the first time I stepped into that room. I had multiple sit downs with the director, but these people, the actors, didn't know that I'm also working with them. Suddenly there is an external person, nobody knows about them, right? And I'm in that room. Now the lead actor who's there, when he's leaving after the entire reading is done, he goes about and shakes hands with everybody but me. He does not shake hands. He stands at the distance. He just does this namaste and he goes out. Now I can do two things. I can try and judge that, oh, this person has a lot of ego. He's not even making the effort to come and shake hands with me, right? Or I could try and understand the possible reason why not. That possible reason could be, one, he doesn't know what my intention is. Am I going to come and start, giving my so-called expert inputs when he is trying to use his experience to act out in a certain manner? It could be it.
Correct.
Or it could be something like, am I giving those signals that you are not welcome, don't come and approach me, right? Because we play that big role. Or third could just be that he just doesn't know me well enough. So maybe if I did a little bit of rapport building on the side with this person, then they will be more than happy to next time come and interact more freely with me. So coming back, judging is absolutely not the right way to use body language and, make sense of what or where somebody is coming from. The best idea is to just go with the flow, understand what's happening and try and see where you can add value. And the third thing is about using just one part of the body. Now, there are parts of the body that are a little more honest than other parts.
Correct.
Hands is definitely not one of them because they are right in front of you. So I'm going to be conscious about my hands and, so on and so forth. So coming to the hands, they are a little deceiving, so to say, especially for those of us who are very conscious about our body language, right? But yes, there are these movements that add a lot of insight into how a person is thinking or feeling. And those movements are more of the self-comforting movements, right? So one of them examples that you shared is him the guest putting his hands under his body. So when do you do that? When you are feeling a lot of cold in your hands and you want to warm up the hands. That cold could be either because the temperature in the room is so, or it could just be that flight response has kicked in because it is so difficult for them that all the blood has rushed into their feet.
Correct.
The feet are getting ready to just move out of the interview, but that scope is not there. So what do? They just try and do that, make their hands feel a little warmer and then start using them again to interact. So that's the whole idea, that you look at hands only when there are these movements happening. Otherwise, if somebody is just communicating using their hand gestures, there is only so much weightage you should put on it. There are other parts of the body that are more honest, and looking at those parts will actually help you to understand more accurately what somebody is trying to
Which is
tell you.
the most honest part of the body?
Okay, now this is a little tricky as a question. I personally feel there are two different parts of the body. Actually, there is a lot to this answer, but let me just start with the feet because of two reasons. One, you are focusing so much on the upper part of your body, your meaning your own body and the other person's body, that feet somewhere start getting ignored, especially in meeting rooms, boardrooms, online meetings. Nobody is thinking of the feet, so that's why the feet have the luxury of showing whatever is actually going on with you. Because like we discussed, controlling body language is very difficult. Now when you're trying to show through your upper body that, oh, I'm calm and composed, I'm totally in the conversation with you, but you're not feeling like that, the
Correct.
body has to leak it out from somewhere, right? So
Correct.
that all freedom comes to the feet. So that's why the feet start showing whatever it is. So I had this interesting conversation with a senior person who hires people. He said the minute somebody comes into the room, if I find that their feet are pointing towards the door, for me, it's a very big signal that this person is not ready for this position. Now, he is not hiring for the entry level. See, in entry level, everybody is more than ready to expect some amount of discomfort. So, again, this myth that, you have to walk into an interview being 100% confident, that is just a myth.
Okay.
But when you are hiring for senior positions and at that point you feel that this person is taking time to settle into that conversation, makes it difficult to hire that person. Why? Because he will be going into meetings where decisions need to be made like that, and you really need to snap out of whatever it is and be in the conversation at the moment. So now when you're taking that much time, it doesn't help. We work with retail companies. We teach them when the shopper's foot is towards the door, that's your what should we say, that opportunity to go approach that shopper, because unless you approach them, they are already out from there. Even when you're walking around, say in the garden, you might have seen two friends are chit-chatting with each other. Whether they are actually involved deeply into the conversation or they were just passing and they just stopped, you can make out from how their feet are pointing. Are they pointing towards each other or do they have their feet pointed outwards? In networking events you will see that, right? So feet play a very big role. Even the shaking of the foot, the tapping of the foot, how that foot is placed on the other foot, all that tells you a lot about what's happening in a person's mind. So
shaking means like literally when I'm like sitting and doing like continuous movement of my foot,
correct.
making
So,
me see as a nervous person.
yes, a lot of times it is nervousness. A lot of times it is a lot of energy in the body. You don't know what to do with that energy, right? So, interestingly, our body language is a little similar when there is a lot of excitement in the body and there's a lot of nervousness in the body.
Okay.
So that is why I said that, words and body language have to be put together. You cannot just mute out words and say, okay, I'm looking at body language, I'm making the full what should we say, I'm deciphering it for what it means. You have to put the two together and then understand where somebody's coming from. So shaking of feet, most of the times it means the person is feeling a little nervous or excited about something. A lot of people come to me and say, oh, but I shake my feet habitually. See, it can be habitual, but that habit, it kicks in only when you're feeling one of the two. And for people who habitually shake their feet, this is something we use for interviewers at an expert level, that when you have a foot shaker in the room and you want to make out what he's thinking about, you wait for that foot to stop shaking or shaking a little more. That's a change in the body language, right? From what is happening constantly to either stopping altogether or increase of pace. So if you are actually looking to learn body language, there's a lot of depth to the subject, and the more accurate and deeper you go into observing people, the more you will get accurate at understanding. Otherwise what happens is सिर्फ तुक्का लगा रहा है कि ये देखा तो इसका मतलब ये था, फुट शेक कर रहे थे मतलब इंटरेस्ट नहीं था. But have you even noticed at what point in the conversation that person started shaking their feet? That is also very important, right? So coming to honest parts of the body, face for that matter, because on the face, you can put no less than 6,000 to 8,000 different expressions, right?
Wow.
That's the amount of muscles that are there on your face. Now, Can you control all of them? I don't think so. So there are these misnomers again that people have poker faces. There's a lot to it. Like we could go on discussing around.
Because of poker face only, I believed before this podcast that maybe the face is the most dishonest part.
Correct. So that's what we feel, because there are things like physiological responses which are there on the face, which you cannot control, right? I'll give you one or two examples. Say pupil dilation. When you want to take in a lot of information about what you are seeing, it can be a person you like, it can be a subject that you like, or it can be a product that you really want to buy. Correct. Your pupils will start dilating. Can you control your pupil dilation? Maybe you'll think that, okay, I will not, do anything to my cheeks. I will not smile. I will maintain good eye contact. But that pupil dilation, you cannot control that. There's another thing called facial blushing, facial blanching. So what happens in these is, if I'm embarrassed about something, right, a lot of blood will flow into my face. If I'm feeling very, very angry and I want to take some action, unlike what most people feel, the face goes not red but white, right? All the blood flows out of the face into either the hands or the feet, because they have to now react. So
Preparing
these are
yourself.
things, correct. So these are things you cannot control. So again, poker face, not that
Entirely in
poker.
control. Okay.
And there is something called micro expressions. Now these are things, expressions that come on your face less than 1/25th of a second. So before you can control that, okay, I don't want to show this reaction, the body has already shown it to the other person, right? So this also you cannot control. These are very few, very rare, but to a keen eye or a good observer, you can understand when these micro expressions are there on the face.
Like being a body language expert, you can pick up this 25th part of a second expression from someone's face.
Yes. And there are a lot of people who are naturally that good. So they don't need any training. I remember we had a person in our team, we had hired him just because he could observe all this so accurately that I was also fascinated. That, you just belong to our team, why don't you just come and join us? So that happens once in a while. But yes, if you're a good observer, you don't need to learn techniques. You can just, make out what's happening in a person's mind. But for that, you need to know where to look. That's the whole key.
So when you talked about this feet and moving of feet and interviewers, are good interviewers in larger companies like MNCs keep their tables transparent because they want to see at someone's feet intentionally?
I personally haven't seen too many such instances why the table is left transparent. There are enough such examples where the table might not be transparent. It could be transparent, right? But the idea is going to be, even if you can see only the upper part of the body, those who are experienced, they can understand what the feet are doing.
They don't need to see the feet.
Correct. Because see, it's not like feet don't belong to the rest of the body, right? Right now, you just shook your foot just a bit. Even if I were not observing that from how your torso shook, I could probably
it's
make
in
that
your
out.
Periphery.
Correct. So that ways, slight movements, that's what it boils down to, how accurately or deeply you are observing. So.
Correct. Crazy. It's already blowing my mind. But as you said, there are few common cues, and we are moving to the next one, which is maintaining the eye contact. So the common thing is maintaining eye contact for an extended period of time until you are not really death staring someone. It shows honesty, and when you are avoiding it, you are being dishonest or nervous. How true is that?
Absolutely not true. I mean, to the extent that most of us, when we want to gather our thoughts, we will look away, then we look back at the person, right? Another thing is, see, when you are staring into somebody's eyes, it gets into their personal territory. Why? Because now they know that you're really observing them very, very closely. So to that extent, we even have a term for it called power gaze. That when you really want somebody to know that I'm watching you and you better be careful of how you are reacting, people in positions of power, they give these power gazes.
This is just another word for death stare.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, so people are literally scared when, they get this power gaze from their boss or from their counterpart saying that, be very careful of where you are going with this That's why kids also say that I know from my mother's expression that, I am in for trouble, because it's that power gaze.
Correct.
So coming back, see, most of us naturally we break eye contact and we look back at somebody, right? When you want to indicate that I'm listening to you, yes, maintaining good eye contact is a very big part of that. But unlike the popular misnomer, actually maintaining a long eye contact is what somebody who's trying to wiggle their way into the truth does. Why? Because it's like watching somebody, a predator, that you want to know when that person is going to attack you. So you have to know every expression. Similarly, if I am making up a story, I want to know everything that's going on in your mind. How are you reading me? And I want to ensure that I don't break my eye contact. Otherwise, your, eyes will go to other parts and you'll start catching where I'm coming from. So that's why they usually, the ones who are trying to fib a story, they will try and maintain more eye contact. Another thing that also happens is, see, they are watching their face. Which means they don't want to show much reactions on their own face. So when you are trying to be careful about too many things, it puts you into what we call as a limbic hijack. Like you can't process everything together. Your limbic brain starts becoming overpowered with how much you're trying to do at the same time. You're saying something, you're watching your expressions, you're also trying to tell the other person that, look, I'm not afraid of what I'm saying. I'm trying to maintain good eye contact with you. That is why that eye contact becomes all the more long and the expression on the face just goes away. So to that extent, you will start getting the feeling that something has become a little different. Let me be a little more careful about where this conversation is going.
Wow. So the next one, coming back to the one, is the handshake. A lot of people judge, especially the businessman, the politician, not only with like the firm or grip, the hard the grip that you have, but also with the extension of arms, like how much you are extending your arms. That usually, as far as I know, signifies the power, how powerful you are. Or maybe that's the general societal terms, or maybe the misconception. So how does the handshake work while you are having the handshake with someone, or you are just seeing it on a screen?
Okay, so I think handshake itself is a big chapter in the vocabulary of body language.
But very, very quickly, I mean.
Yeah, so what happens is, understanding people from handshake, it starts by how much of palm contact you have, right? If I'm trying to give you like
just the fingers.
Yeah, either the fingers or just, the part of my palm that doesn't really be involved in shaking my hands with you, you will not get a good feel. You might feel this person is not really that interested in conversing with you. So see, in the Indian context, you also have to understand that somewhere that gender plays a role, although it's not that much now in at least the business environment. But when I have seen handshakes in not a very professional setup, even if it's a business environment, people don't give a very good handshake cross gender. Now if I'm judging that you don't want to shake hands, it could just be that the person is not used to shaking so many hands cross gender, right? So how much of the palm is involved? Another thing is that palm sweaty? Because our palm sweats only under discomfort, not when you're feeling hot, right? So that means there is some discomfort, there is some anxiety in meeting you as a person, or maybe the deal itself, or where they are coming from, the situation, something is putting them off. So that's just the palm. Now, how many times you shake the hand? I'm sure if you've seen any kind of handshakes gone wrong, one of the things will be how long you just keep holding that other person's hand. Because this is it's like you're physically in contact with somebody. It has to be big, fast and quick, and then you have to let go. So if it's a prolonged exposure to contact, the other person doesn't they don't feel that good, right? And the third one is how extended the hand is.
Before you, sorry to cut off, but before you move into the third one, what you said, the extended duration of handshake, usually I have seen this in politicians. In a lot of politicians, there's an extended period of handshake between the ministers, between the cross-country diplomats and all the rest of it. Does this signify something?
So, see, in that sense, there are 2-3 reasons why this might happen, especially for politicians, because there's a lot of power play going on, right? So, we've written a lot of articles. If somebody is interested, they can go and read it. But the idea is, where who's standing, who starts with a dominant handshake, who puts their hand up, then there will be the other person putting their hand on
second
top
hand,
of
yeah.
that. So all that keeps happening when we talk about politicians' handshakes, right? A prolonged handshake could also be because rapport building is happening at that time, so they might also be talking, conversing, and they are very aware of the cameras. They want every media journalist to catch that handshake on the camera. So if they don't give you that much of time, how does it happen? So all this is going on, that while I'm shaking hand, I'm getting that chance to communicate whatever small talk I want to do. So maybe they're not focusing that much on the handshake, or they are trying to retaliate that power play happening, or they are trying to pose for that clicks to happen by the media journalists. So that's why a lot of context has to be built into any time we are trying to analyze a situation using body language as a tool.
Also being on top of someone's hands, being more dominance.
Yes, so that is there, that when the palm is seen, the skin of the palm is lighter. So it's evolutionary, that when you see my skin, you can see there's nothing in my hands, I'm not going to attack you. So from that extent, when you see somebody's palm, it shows them to be harmless. Like when a police officer puts the gun out, the person will do that. Look at my hands. So similarly, in a conversation, if I wanted you to speak up, I'll extend my hand, keeping that palm in an upward position, right? So similarly, in a handshake, this is something that salespeople are taught, that if you want your client to feel on top of the situation or very comfortable, the minute they step and give your palm in a slightly downward position. So similarly, this means submissive, friendly, open. So the opposite of that is this, when I make sure that you can't see the skin of my palm, so I'm trying to dominate, or I'm trying to tell you that I don't care what opinion you make of me, because I am the alpha here. So that's how. So there's, in that 2 seconds of that handshake, there's so many things happening. We've got these case studies where there's a wedding reception and the groom is going around shaking hands. I'm sure you all have those collections of pictures, so you can also just do that to all the listeners. But what happens is, same person shaking hands with different people, you will see every handshake is different, because the way or the mood of the person at the moment, along with what is their dynamics with the person, along with whether they were expecting them, not expecting them, whether they are open to conversing with that person, not conversing with them. So all that you can see through how that same person's handshake in the same one event is different from person to person. So that's how it goes.
Just one last point on handshake. I personally feel that, I had this slightest idea of body language, so I always try to have a firm handshake. But over the time, what I've observed is some people don't like such handshakes. So being aware of that the other person might not be comfortable of a hard or firm or confident handshake, I also tend to loosen up my grip just because of that.
Right. So see, it's an art that you learn over time. That the rule of shaking hands is you have to match the pressure of the person across, right? So like you said, that you might have loosened it up a bit because maybe the physique, maybe your palm is a little bigger than the other ones. So when you give that handshake, naturally it looks or feels a little more powerful. So if it feels like that, in the moment you can loosen up the grip. But it can also work a little against you. For example, if say you are going to somebody who's very powerful and you give that kind of a soft handshake and you don't correct it in the moment, then they might feel that, okay, maybe you're not up to the game.
It has happened with me actually.
Correct. So the idea is those 2 seconds of the handshake, you really need to do a lot of things there. One, just match the other person. 2, understand where they are coming from. And 3, ensure that from your end, you are putting in the effort to build the right connection with the kind of handshake that you give.
So you mean rather than having a firm handshake and then being confident, it's good to be confident, and if the other person loses the grip, you better gentle up yourself.
Yes, that's very well summarized.
Correct. Okay, so we'll move on to the next chapter.
Yeah.
Body language in daily life. There are some instances which you being an expert identify someone being a red flag in the day-to-day conversation. Could you name a few of those red flag body languages that people can just with this quick podcast understand in someone else?
Okay, so now see, red flag could vary from situation to situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
For example, say I am a person less confident. Will I want the other person to maintain too much of eye contact with me? It might put me off. So, the idea is going to be for red flags, one is the person getting involved in the conversation with you or
Okay.
not, right? So, to that extent, all of us see the somewhere the burden is on both sides. If I want to try and understand that you are not a red flag, I would also be mindful of my own body language.
Correct.
Am I sitting in a way like that, so you are reacting the way you are reacting, or is it actually that I am all okay and it's you who's being the red flag, right? So coming back to just the red flags, one is a person open to conversing with you. We indicate that not just like we discussed through how crossed or not crossed the arms are. The torso is a very big indicator, like is your torso turned towards somebody, or are you just looking like that just with your eyes and just with
on top of your shoulder.
Correct. So that could be one thing to look out for, that is a person getting involved in a conversation with you, or are they just looking at you for the sake of it, which means they are not genuinely interested in talking with you.
Correct.
That's there. Second one could be how watchful the person is being, like are they having lots of gaps between what they are saying, they are not saying, because those gaps will come not just in the verbal language, it will also come through the body language. It will be very measured. Like for example, if I'm somebody who's using a lot of hand gestures to talk, and suddenly you ask me a question and I just try and be careful about whether I'm using my hands, or the amount of hand gestures start going down, then that means I'm being watchful. So now if you know that in general so and so is very expressive as a person, but when I go around them they start tuning down how much they are talking or what they are saying or how expressive they are as people, then again it could indicate to you that maybe this person is not as involved or as interested in what I'm telling to them, right? So this is on a one-on-one basis. In teams also these red flags are always there, like when two people are together, is there synchrony in their body language, in how their actions broadly are getting performed. For team managers, the biggest red flag is when people in the team all give different reactions to exactly the same situation in more than one instance. So that tells the team manager, for example, if say we are doing a remote meeting and I tell everybody that yes, every day, every week we get together on a Thursday, but now onwards I want you all to come in on Mondays. If I see the same kind of reaction, that means that they are all on a parallel footing. But if everybody is giving different reactions, it could be that they have different things on their minds. But habitually, if I keep seeing that on a regular basis, for me that will be a big red flag. That is there not enough bonding between the team members, that everybody is thinking so differently from each other. So then that also becomes a red flag for some of us, right?
Correct.
So it will depend on which is the kind of situation. The idea is going to be just like a broad indicator. You should know, especially in the workplace, when you know people well or you're interacting with them on a regular basis. It can be in the workplace, it can be with your friends at in your daily life, or it could be with your family members, right? If you know what their normal behavior is like, you just try and compare it with how they are behaving today or with you. That itself tells you whether they are okay, they are not okay, or something is on their mind, which then asking the right questions or giving them the right opportunity, it will come out in some way or the other.
Correct.
Right? So that's the broad way in which you can use the comparison to understand. Because see, the problem is there is no one way in which all of us indicate exactly the same thing, right? So for example, you might be somebody to back channel or to tell me that you're listening to me. You have two things you do. You nod back and you have that small intense look on your face because you're also trying to process. There are some of us who, while having that neck tilt, we nod. There are some of us who nod and smile back. So I cannot just put a general, category that, okay, when somebody is listening to you, they will always behave in this manner. So that ways, just having typical red flags becomes a little difficult.
Correct. Well put. How can you detect lies, being a body language expert?
So again, see, lies by itself, lies is a very broad term. I could be lying because I don't want you to feel bad about something. So it's a white lie. Maybe you asked me, is everything okay? And maybe I'm feeling a little cold, but I don't want you to feel that, I'm feeling cold because you have a jacket on and I don't want you to feel like that, right? So that could be a white lie. Like, I'm just trying to be nice and polite to you. We do that on a regular basis. The spouse has cooked something. They ask you, how is that food? And you say, oh, very well cooked. Maybe it's not that good, but it's that intent to which you are just responding back, right? So you are lying, but not lying there.
Correct.
That's there. Second thing could be that you have a broader agenda on your mind. You are thinking of 10 things that can go wrong, because of which you are putting yourself out there that, okay, I'm vulnerable, but I cannot harm or, take this bigger risk. In which case, the person themselves will indicate very, very openly that I am lying over here.
Okay.
Right? Okay. So that's very easy. Most of us just get it because that person themselves will become submissive. They will let loose and they will let you know that this is me lying. Then there are some of us who have convinced ourselves that this is not a lie. Obviously, this is how it should be. Now, in those cases, it becomes very difficult to be able to decipher whether that person is lying or not. So, statistically, even the people who are so-called trained to be experts in deception, they get it right only 85% of times.
Wow.
Right? So, that is how difficult it is to catch people who are lying. What we can do is, when we see, say, asynchrony, see, most of the times what happens is your body language is synchronous, which means even if you're not agreeing, the entire body language in some way will tell me that this person is not agreeing. If you're agreeing, if you're liking something, if you're open to it, more or less the body language is in synchrony. Like different parts of the body are indicating something similar. But when only one part of the body is showing something different, the other parts of the body are showing you something very different. Like something showing discomfort, but the rest of the body is showing a lot of comfort and ease. That is somewhere the person is not wanting to share everything that's on their mind with you. Maybe they feel it's not the right moment. They want to share it with you, but it's not the right moment. So do you want to be quick to judge that this person is holding back information? Or do you want to take in what you are seeing, either wait for the right moment or ask the right questions, or try and ask questions and see if that body language is lining up. For example, if I saw that there is this discomfort in your body language, like I use a lot of eyebrow raise when I'm talking or conversing, that's what a lot of us use to emphasize what we are saying. Now, in middle of the conversation, if I start not using my eyebrows to converse, you will somewhere get a sense whether you know कि eyebrow को देखना है नहीं देखना है. Maybe you get it, maybe you don't. But intuitively, if you're just closely looking at somebody, you will get a sense कि कुछ अलग हो रहा है इधर, right? So at that point, instead of trying to judge that this person has become very watchful, you just try and do one of the two things. Either you try and ask the right questions so that the person starts easing up and confiding in you, so that onus lies on you to build the rapport all over again, right? कि आपका भी एक responsibility है. So you can do that rapport building and get me to open up again with you. Or you start looking for confirmation. जैसे अगर मैं सही में आपको उल्लू बनाने का try कर रही थी, right? I was trying to make either I feel that you will not catch me. That is why I am trying to deceive you. Or maybe I think कि समझ में नहीं आएगा तो मैं क्यों ये सब चीज का बात करूं. And I'm trying to not say the entire truth. So at that point, the eyebrow raise will let you know, and maybe you can intervene. Otherwise, what will happen is you will get that sense. Because उसके बाद मेरा जो body language है ना, वो कहीं पे आपको confirmation देना चालू कर देगा. Because I will start shutting down, or I will take an extra effort to try and amp up my expressiveness, because मुझे समझ में आ गया कि अभी आपको समझा है कि मैं आपको I'm trying to make a fool out of you. So that is why catching deception becomes a little tricky in that sense.
Correct. So the bigger part is, since I'm sitting in front of you, have you this really pops up in my mind, like how do you make sure that the person who knows that you are a body language expert and sitting in front of you when you are coaching a team or elsewhere or a single person, that they're not uncomfortable, because you know that you are not judging them, but you're observing them very closely?
So see, that's not just with me. मतलब I might proclaim that I can systematically teach you to read body language. I've come across a lot of people who are very good, very good. So in fact, right now I'm working with such an individual, and I just love being there for that session because he can really read people well. He will not know कि ये मैंने देखा वो मैंने देखा, but he is very accurate at reading people. So the idea being, those of us who observe, we have to do it in such a way that the other person does not start feeling conscious about it.
Exactly.
Right? That's about it. Baki, if I wanted you to know that, you know, I am as much a human being as you are, it boils down to how vulnerable I am when I am with the clients. If I open up my vulnerable side to them in terms of the conversation, in terms of how I am using my body language as well, they also start becoming okay with it, right? Because ultimately when you are doing like a one-on-ones, it's more about just opening up yourself and letting the other person help you. So I think most of them are pretty okay. When we do role plays in workshops where my role is to just, you know, sharpen their sense of observation and just drill them down to what they were doing, a lot of people just look forward to it. Because wherever I go, the first question people ask is, how is my body language? So it's not like people are not keen to know.
Correct.
Everybody wants to know what I'm doing, how I'm doing, where can I improve. So to that extent, I think at least in the career that I've had till now, thankfully, most people are okay. It's only when you go in for those interviews where people know that, okay, some expert has come and they are really watching what you're doing, they become a little conscious. So we try and avoid those situations. There are ways of doing it very indirectly. Right? So maybe you're not in that conversation. I've gone to these coffee shops where an actual interview is happening, but it's on the table next to me. And I'm there, I'm just, you know, maybe on the phone, maybe on the laptop.
You mean you intentionally there?
Yes, I'm intentionally there. I'm called in there that you have to observe this individual. We'll do it in a spot so that you're not in that boardroom and watching the person. We don't want them to feel that they are getting watched, but there's a lot at stake. So they don't want there to be any goof-ups happening. So once in a while, it doesn't happen too often, but that does happen, and that time you have to be a little discreet. So it's about the peripheral vision. Like a lot of us can see from the sides. Unfortunately, those who wear glasses, it becomes a little less. So these days I'm wearing glasses because of all this allergy and all, and that makes me realize just how much wearing lenses helps me. It's a boon because then you can see all the way till there. Right. So I think one time when we were working with the special commandos in the Indian forces, so they wear this mask when they go for the situations or shootouts wherever they need to go, right? So now the mask really restricts the vision. So they also have to learn how to broaden the peripheral vision. So something is happening here, but if there's movement over there, they have to be able to catch it. So to that extent, if you love observing, you can just work on how to broaden where till what extent you can see, and that ways, even if you're looking away, you will be able to observe what the other person is doing, and that makes them feel a little bit at ease, especially when you are at a leadership position. Right. So
I'll come to this Indian Army when you are training them, but again, coming back to the same thing, let's just continue on this one for a minute. Let's say if you're on a family dinner table and everyone knows, or just with your friends, so do you make conscious efforts to make them feel comfortable knowing that they know you are being a body language expert?
I think in my family, there are people, or
they're used to, of course, but
they are used to, they are better than me. So, because you know, we keep discussing iska ye matlab hai, uska ye matlab hai. So my daughter is an expert. I mean, she comes and tells me, are you having this problem at work? And I have to ask her, you are not supposed to know that. So the point being, see, in general, when all of us are with our families, it's become a big problem that we as a brand deal with when it comes to my brand for children, Q Kids, where we talk with parents, we talk with teachers, we talk with children, where giving that mind space very consciously to people you are in the room with has become a big issue. Our attention span is going down. We have like mobiles. So a lot of us are multitasking. A lot of us are distracted just because the device is in our hands, things like that, right? So lot of high pressure jobs. So things happening in the workplace. So when you go and sit down on that table with your friends or family, all of us have to make that conscious effort to indicate to that other person that I am in the room with you. I want to give you my 100%. And if something is bothering me, it's not you, it's something else that is on my mind. So forgive me, but help me out over here. So all this you can actually do through your non-verbal communication. So
Wow.
learning how to do that can really impact your family life, your work-life balance, your relationships, and so much more.
This is actually heavy, but equally interesting and stimulating for me. But there are so many topics that from your conversation I want to deep dive in, but I'll just take two. One is the Indian Army that I'll take after this. And the earlier one, you just said that being on mobile phones and not giving your mind space to others. So, being a body language expert, knowing that you are on a table where someone is, let's say myself, is looking into this tablet, so I'm not consciously controlling my other body parts, even though I am a bit aware of body language. Does it make easier for you to judge others who are diverting their focus on the devices so they are true to their body languages?
So see, the first thing is I would not talk at all. If I saw you were on a device, I'll just wait it out. Because especially when the conversation is important, right? Why? Because if your attention is divided, right now it could be the device, but in general also we do that all the time. When we feel that the person's attention is divided, it's always a good idea to take a pause there. Let the person gather their thoughts or finish whatever they're doing and then talk to them. Because yes, maybe I can put my perspective around why you are behaving the way you are, because you are multitasking or finishing two things at the same time. But then if it's important and you're not giving me that your space, so to say, right, then are you even going to do what I'm asking you to do? Right? So to that extent, it's very important. And also when I work with the leaders, this is something we make very clear, that when you are asking a person's confirmation, it's not just for leadership positions anywhere. Say you are on a team and you have a colleague, आप उनको पूछते हैं कि इतना काम मेरा है, इतना काम आपका है, will you finish this work on time? That colleague is giving you a response. They are saying a yes, but there is a hesitation in their body language, or they are not saying it with equal enthusiasm as they should be saying. Did you catch it, or were you on your device and you didn't get that? बाद में अगर आप जाके बोलोगे कि तूने बोला था तू कर लेगा, तूने किया नहीं है. Now that person was being nice to you. It's another example of you will think झूठ बोल रहे थे. They were not deceiving, they were just trying to be nice. But if you had looked at their body language, you would have made that out. But you were getting distracted by that device. So being mindful, like we are mindful of our body language, also being mindful of how distracted you are by either your surroundings or by your devices, that is equally important when it comes down to giving your presence in that room.
Right. So as I said, I'll come back to this Indian Army point. Do you basically train the army personals or their managers? First question.
So we've done limited assignments, so to say. I have to clarify that. But when we work with them, there are different kind of sessions that we've done. It's been in the training format, and we work with the Special 26. You might have heard about them, right?
Yes,
so
correct.
NGS is also how they are known as. So we've done different sessions. One was around how to just understand comfort signals around discomfort. A lot of them protect VVIPs. Right?
Okay.
So there are a lot of these instances where somebody is showing the intention to attack. You could have made it out in split second before it happened if you were observant about the body language before that instance.
Wow.
So understanding that can really mean the difference between saving lives and trying to save lives, right? So that's something we've done. We've done for negotiations, because sometimes not the entire team, but some parts of that team could also be coming in after the negotiator is just stepping out or at that point. So understanding that hostage situation and how that is working out. We've talked about networking events, because a lot of these army officials, they go into these networking events, they are meeting their seniors, how to know that the senior is open to conversing, not conversing. We've done family life, because a lot of times the personal, they come back home for a very limited time. So the spouses need to be able to ensure that they know what's going on and make them feel good. So something around family bonding, emotional intelligence. We've even, this is in the pipeline, we've not done this, but this is something that's coming up, which is when they enter into a room, in a split second, they have to be able to know whether this person is a friend or a foe.
Wow.
Right? So if you observe very carefully, I'm sure if you've seen detective series and all, you would know left-handed eye, right-handed eye, you know, things like that. So these kind of signals, anyways, they are picking up. But
Okay.
where is that intention to hide? Or where is that intention to indicate something but be something else?
Okay.
How close is the person to a situation, not to a situation? All that within seconds, if you have to pick up, you have to be really, really accurate at picking up the body language cues. So our intention is not to teach them. They have already been trained on that. The intention is to just validate it for them. Because picking up the gun and firing is not an easy thing to do. Not for anybody, right? So if they are somewhere confirmed that what you're picking up from people is the right body language, it just helps them to take that decision more confidently. So that's where our role comes in.
Wow, crazy. I knew this is going to be an interesting conversation, but never realized that it's going to be so deep, so wide, and so insightful. But I'm surely loving this. I could already say that this is the podcast and the conversation that I've most enjoyed myself.
I think a lot goes to the host, asking the right questions, being interested and showing through your body language that you're interested. I think
I guess maybe that is because of that curiosity after reading the Joe Navarro's book. That got me thinking a lot, and that was in my mind since like 3 or 4 months in the pipeline, that I wanted to do this podcast with someone who is a real expert, not somebody who is showing or trying to be an expert. So I was just waiting for the right person, and then I found you.
So
I was
see,
very
my
lucky.
journey has been, you're right there, that, you know, reading a book and putting into practice are
Yes.
two different things. And in my journey, what I've realized is a lot of us can pick up books and read them. But join the dots, that's what, call it expertise. That's where we come in as a team. Because you might know that, okay, eye contact का मतलब ये होता है,
हाँ,
but
correct.
किस situation में क्या होता है, whether you are taking the right decision based on that or not, that is what we want to help and, you know, make people relate with. So that takes a little bit of experience, but with God's grace, you know, and people who've believed in helping us reach that journey, somewhere we've reached there. So
With so much information and cues that you are picking every second, do you ever feel like you're a bit exhausted?
I think we have to have two modes. One mode in which you are just generally observing people and trying to connect with them, making them feel good around them. And the other is that super antenna that you have to switch on only for those many seconds,
So
right?
you're able to do that.
All of us who are in those high stake situations, we have to do that. You talk to any person who steps into those kind of negotiations. I'm sure whenever you do start your own, you know, I know that you have a family into the real estate. So if you do that now or you do it later, it is going to come up at a point in time that, you know, you step into that room, you have to make out who that influencer is, decision maker is, whether these two people are on the same footing or they are different, and whom you should have that next meeting with. So your super antenna has to be alert, even if it is just for that much time. So it does exhaust because you have to really use a lot of observation in that moment, but it's not every day that you need to do that. For general purposes, like just knowing whether the team is getting along well, whether your friend is angry with you or not, there are broader perspectives that usually are enough. So
Well, it's kind of a split personality that you've developed within yourself.
Strangely, you talk to any working professional, they have the same. That, you know, when you are at home with family, your body language is more relaxed, it's more open, it's more honest. The minute you step into your shoes, like you have a spouse who's in the office space, you will see them, the minute they are dressed for work, suddenly they will snap into a different body language. Their responsiveness will be different, their walk, their demeanor, everything will suddenly change. So it doesn't happen just with me, it happens with every individual, that when you are doing different roles, And I think somewhere when we talk about adaptive leadership, it's a very crucial part that depending on which role you are playing, you have to be able to adapt to it. What you are putting out there, what is yourself, what is your communication, how is your body language coming across, it has to be adaptable to the situation. So if you are able to do that, it's actually a good trait to have.
Wow. So shall we talk a bit about confidence as well?
You are sure the audience will be up for a very long podcast, right?
I think
Okay.
this, if see, the ones who are really interested, I believe, is gonna see this until the end.
Okay.
And the ones who are gonna not like it are gonna skip in the first 10 minutes.
Okay,
Not
so
even
as
that.
long as that is happening, I'm okay
Yeah.
talking.
Because the ones who are really I mean, this podcast is, being honest, not for everyone. This
Right.
is for that specific level of intellect that the people has who are really trying to upscale themselves in their particular categories of fields of profession, and they are really
Right.
trying to learn something new, that how to talk to people without talking to them.
Right.
So this will really mean a value addition for someone who really wants to scale up themselves.
And then I'm okay talking. I'm just wondering about the audience.
No, that's totally fine. That's totally fine.
Carry on.
So another one is how to show confidence or how to fake confidence using body language, because sometimes for the ones who are going for the interviews, this makes it really difficult, and this is really helpful for even to fake it. And sometimes people also say they're trying to fake it, and it just goes inherently inside them that they start feeling confident just with the postures of the body.
Correct. So again, this is one of the most frequent question that comes to us as a team, because see, job interviews is a very high stakes situation, right? So naturally it makes a lot of us feel a little bit of anxiety, especially when there's a lot at stake. For example, if it's your first interview, or when you go for higher roles, there are only those 1 or 2 positions in the entire country that are available and open to you. So it becomes very high stake. A little bit of anxiety is anticipated, but nevertheless, if you want to feel confident, yes, there are different kind of ways to calm yourself down. That itself will help you out. Like, you just let the energy out in different ways. There are people who just laugh it out. There are people who will do those wall push-ups. There are those who will just do some cardio, things like that. If that won't work, just having expansive body language, right? Before you step into that zone, that really helps. A lot of us know it as power poses. It has been contended in some fields, so to say, that power posing, the research behind it was not too accurate, things like that. But in a lot of cultures, there is a lot of different research that talks about this, that when you have expansive body language, right, you hold it for some time, it makes, see, the way your body reacts to what your mind is feeling. Similarly, if your body is in a certain way, you will start feeling like that, right? So like your mind reacts to and your body responds to it. So similarly, the way your body is, the mind will somewhere start coping up to that. So if you try it out, it will help you to kind of settle into that first 1 or 2 minutes. After that, life should be okay, right? Because you've gone there, you also prepared for it. You can't have like 2-3 confident hacks and feel that, oh, I'm going to really impress the interviewer, I don't need to know what I'm going to answer. That just doesn't work, right? Similarly, interviewers know that it's a high stakes situation. I've talked with the senior most people in different firms, and they confirm this, that even if in the first 1 or 2 minutes people are a little anxious, it's okay. We are looking to understand how eager they are, how enthusiastic they are. So when the right questions come up, for example, you're talking in general, those questions are meant for you also to settle down. Like when the interviewer is asking you a few general questions. But when it comes to that role that you played in a similar project before, or the role that you're applying for, at that time, if they don't see the right energy or enthusiasm, then no matter how confident you are looking, it is not going to work out for you, right? Similarly, third is when you try to fake something that's not you. For example, just last week I was working with an entrepreneur, family business, different businesses they have, and he's going to step into it very soon. So we were doing this exercise, that because you're younger in age and you will be meeting a lot of clients who will be very old, they will be not very old, like there will be a big age gap. They will already be a lot dominant in the fields they are working. How will you amp up your confidence? So I showed him a few power poses that people generally have even in the workplace. Like
So sorry to interrupt, but by power poses, do you just mean covering up more area like the expansion you say, or does that also relate with the, like how people sit with their hands like this or like this when they indicate dominance or power?
This is actually a signal of confidence. It's
Okay.
not a signal of dominance.
Okay.
So, two different things. Like when we talked about power posing before entering into the room, just to feel more confident, that is the place where you just expand your body as much as possible.
And take
Right?
more space, basically.
Correct, correct. Take in more space.
Hmm.
You could do it by just opening up your arms and your feet and, being that way. You could just sit up on a chair or a sofa and expand with how you had that foot like that, right? So expand up. This is one power pose. So different ways in which you have expansive body language before you step into that conversation. So the right chemicals again get released in your body to make you feel less stressed out.
Okay.
Right? So that is before the situation. This power pose that I was referring to right now, that people have in the boardrooms or when they know they are in a position of more power. Again, it can be in colleagues also. For example, if a colleague feels that मेरे बॉस के ऊपर मेरी ज़्यादा चलती है, इनकी इतनी नहीं चलती है, then even in that conversation they will have that power pose कि तुमको जो बोलना है बोलो. When we go into that meeting, whatever I say is going to be what the boss says, right? So that is also somewhere having that power pose. So coming back to the example, when I was working with this young entrepreneur and I was showing him few power poses that people have and asking him, what will you do? So there was this one power pose. So we study Coffee with Karan a lot, for examples.
Okay.
So there is this one pose that Salman Khan is having in one of them. I had shown it to him that, he's seated like that.
The old episode.
Hands are dominant.
Yeah.
Correct.
The one with the rapid fire with Karan, I guess.
Yes. So
Yeah,
in that
correct,
entire episode, he's seated like that. So this picture is there. He's seated like that. Not this much space. He's, having that big sofa and hands on the armrest.
Correct.
Hands also in this dominant position like we discussed. Eyes also closed to the back. It's very, very dominant as a position. So I asked
Adding
him.
into that topic as well, there was this rapid fire round between Karan and Salman, and he was, when answering the question, he had one hand like this as far as I can remember, and he was like, when Karan was asking, okay, ask next, he was doing like this. So what does this signify?
So it's in general two things. Expansive body language, much, much bigger than you are.
Okay.
His frame is already large.
Okay.
On top of that, he is putting his arm not here, but there.
Yes,
right?
correct.
It's as big as you can be and hand in a dominant position. So it's as powerful as you can get. So interestingly, on his topic, you go and watch his episode with his brothers and you will see just how they are also not feeling as comfortable because of that power pose that he has in that entire conversation, right? So coming back, again, we'll just wrap up this example. So this power pose of Salman Khan is there, and I take it as an example because I've seen that in a lot of boardrooms as well.
Okay.
Maybe not the people are very polished, but there are enough such raw individuals who believe that whatever is on my mind, I have to just, indicate it through my body language. If that is there, and you as a person are somebody who's, calm and collected, you have to fight that power pose. Are you going to be able to match up that power pose and sit? So he showed me something and said, okay, I'm going to put my body to the back. I will put my hands like that and sit. And I asked him, is that you as a personality? So it's not. So can you put that on as a fake confident body language and sell it? You can't, right? So for different people, different personalities, what works as confident can be very different. So you have to somewhere understand yourself, try out a few poses of confidence, and then understand in that room of high stake, be it an interview, be it a job promotion, whatever it is, be it say just having a matrimonial discussion with somebody you are looking to get hooked up with, right? Having what works naturally for you as a pose of confidence, I think you should just go by that. Don't read 10 tips on confidence and just go and blindly put them on. They don't work.
Right. As we discussed about Salman Khan, let's move on to PM Narendra Modi's body language. We already discussed the handshake, but do you have something familiar or maybe something expressive for the audience that you can make out of his body language, like the power, dominance, confidence, or something from his body language?
So I think as an individual, he is really evolved over the years. I remember we had done a interview of sorts, write up on his body language when he just became the prime minister, and conversing in English was not like his, strength.
Go-to language, yeah.
And he went to a BRICS summit and he was talking there, and that body language, if you
Correct.
had seen that, constantly fidgeting, not looking at the audience, talking in that monotone, to where he is now. See, as a personality, he's been somebody who's magnanimous, but when it comes to being in front of the camera and representing a brand India, it's a different ball game
Correct.
altogether, right? So to that extent, you even seen him experiment a lot. Like when he talks in English, again, it's not his strength, so his body language becomes very different. So now he's understood that he just goes by his language of comfort, and there are people just interpreting it for others, and then he's himself, right? When he goes to say UN, there is this one hand gesture, that the pointed finger, which comes very naturally for a lot of people when they stand in front of a large audience, because they want the it's an intention that they might be having, that this is what it means, this is what it means. But on an international ground, pointed finger is something that's totally not acceptable, right? Because it is a very aggressive gesture. In fact, wherever you use it, when you point your finger at somebody, it's taken as a threat. So their mind is already so alert that they might not accept what you are telling them. Now him, when you see him on the international forefront, he's changed that to become a precision grip. Because when he is using it, this is how he meant it, but that's where he was using it, and suddenly he changed that. So the same person in an Indian interview and in an international interview, you will see different kind of hand gestures, intonations coming across, right? And even the kind of gaps that are taken, because when an interpreter is there and they need to
Correct.
change it for you, and when you are also seeing a reaction. For example, when I'm talking to you right now, I'm indicating something through my body language, but when the interpreter is saying something, they might not be saying it at that exact moment. So for you to be able to understand what I am indicating, I need to slow down how expressive I am as an individual, right? So all that tuning has to be done. Domestically it's different, and internationally it's a little different. So that ways.
So I was observing this iPhone 16 launch yesterday night, before this podcast. I've observed in the iPhone 16 launch that Tim Cook and his team, how they've performed their body language, how they've launched the product is like very similar in terms of body language. What I've observed is they keep their arms close to their waist. Either they keep their hands like this, or maybe just as you say, the confident poses or something, but they don't try to swing it wide open. Of course, they do just like this, like a robotic arms, and they keep their feet steady and the rest of the body very still. So does this really signify something?
Okay, so there are different things I can think of for answering this question actually. First one is for people who are media trained, and most people who come in front of the camera regularly representing the brand, they will be media trained. There is no doubt about it, right? So if they all had media training from the same person or team, they will be taught similar things or similar techniques to say, right? So that could be one reason why you see that kind of similarity in their body language. One of the things that we do talk about is purposeful movements. So purposeful movements also includes keeping your gestures in check, right? So that the audience is focusing more on what you are saying rather than just the arm movement. So obviously both have to be in synchrony, but then not having random movements, things like that, right? So it could be one reason. Second one could be that they are seated too close to each other, because I have not watched this
So
particular
it is
episode.
like, let me explain you a bit. It is like they are on a different frames. One is doing it in Apple Park, one is doing in their media room, and they have compiled the footage like once there is someone explaining, then the product, then someone else, then the product, and so on and so forth.
So then I think in that sense, it's most definitely the media training that is there. And as a brand, they would be having their internal do's and don'ts.
Let me also show you the photos. I have it. We'll put it on the screen for the audience as well. So this is how the Tim Cook starts.
Yeah, I think I watched this similar, even if this was yesterday.
No, it wasn't yesterday. I was studying this yesterday.
Because
this
I've seen this.
This was the second guy, and this was between the products. So see again the arms like this. Then I've kept still pictures like the lady, this one as well, and even him. Like the two of them having their arms like this, a couple of them like this, and the rest.
So I think in this case, 2-3 things are there. One is, see, when you're standing and speaking, there are very limited things you can do unless an audience is in front of you. So one is resting position. Like when you don't want to keep using your hands, what do you do with your hands? Right? So you don't want to cross, because unfortunately a lot of us don't understand crossed arms. So what most of us who do public speaking are taught is either you do that, it's a steeple, a sign of high confidence, or just rest your arms like that, right? Okay, so this is a resting position that a lot of people use because it signifies you're very confident about what you're saying, right? So since it's a little common, and a lot of people who have done any kind of media training I would personally advise to go with something like that, where your fingers are interlocked but they don't move a lot, and your thumbs are rising against the gravity. So that somewhere signals that you are very confident of what you're saying. So I think that they are doing something similar. Either they are just holding a steeple, or they're just holding their hands together. The idea being, when you are doing any kind of public speaking where the audience is not in front of you, either you will use your hands, which is what we see here, using limited hands because they want to show purpose, not just haphazardly moving their hands around. And when you don't want to use your hands, you just want to rest them, you go with a gesture or a position like that. So that's broadly what we see. And since everybody is doing a similar kind of gesturing and a holding of the posture, that's why somewhere we feel that they all belong together. So that's how it is.
There are two photos a bit viral on the internet, one being of Elon Musk and one being of Ronaldo. They're both doing different poses. So Elon Musk posing with all his fingers like this that we have discussed, and Ronaldo with his fingers like this during an interview. Would you like to decode both of this again?
So see, like we said, this is what is called a steeple. We don't need to know the name, but the idea being only the fingertips touch each other. Okay, so it means that the person is very confident about their thoughts, which is why people who want to show that confidence will always hold their hands like that, right? Now the idea is, if a person sitting like that, you can't feel they are agreeing with me. They are just very confident in whatever is going on in their heads, and that's where it stops, right? So now, depending on the conversation, you will have to see if you are asking them a question that's against what they were talking about and they are holding that, you might need to drill them a little more. But if they were already speaking out what was in their mind, and you are freely having that conversation, then they're just being confident of what they are talking about. Correct. Right? So that's what it means. This one, so I've seen, even I think Trump uses this a lot. So where the thumbs are rising upwards, so that's the bit that's significant. Where rising of thumbs, see, naturally when you keep your hands like that, the arms will just fall. So your entire digits all will just lie loose. But when you make an effort to rise your thumbs, it is going against gravity. So your body or your mind has to put an extra effort to do that, right? Okay. That is why it signals that whatever this person is doing, it's a deliberate effort in showing you this body language. So it means the person is confident. Wow. So interestingly, in battle times, when they used to shoot weapons and all, the thumb is the one that was very crucial, right? Without the thumb, the warrior becomes a little less powerful. So at any point when a person feels less confident or they are trying to retract, Like we discussed about the freeze, fight and flight.
Yes.
So that flight where you are trying to go away, thumbs will start getting hidden from the conversation because they are trying to take a back seat or something in that conversation is bothering them. So
Wow.
for people like me, when we are decoding and somebody seated like that, I will only be observing when is that thumb going down, when is that thumb self-comforting, when is that thumb movement becoming more or less. That itself tells you a lot of story without that person even realizing it.
Wow.
So that's how powerful it can be.
Okay. So going to the last part of this podcast, we have something really interesting for the audience and also for myself as well, which is decoding body language live.
Okay.
So I have a couple of footages which I'm going to show you, and I'll put it for the audience as well on the editing part. The first one being the recently released podcast of Nikhil Kamath with PM Sri Narendra Modi.
Okay.
So we'll take that snippet, and I would like if you can decode this live, that what you observe, if audience can get a bit of insight.
Sure.
You can see it, right?
Yes.
अगर किसी युवा को आज पॉलिटिशियन बनना है तो उसमें ऐसी कोई टैलेंट्स है जो आप परख सकते हैं ऐसे कि ये होना चाहिए?
दो चीजें अलग अलग है. पॉलिटिशियन बनना वो एक पार्ट है और पॉलिटिक्स में सफल होना वो दूसरी चीज है. तो दो अलग तरीके से.
Okay, just pause it there. Right. So see, 2-3 things which are here. One is he is leaning more on one side than on the other. Right. So now when he's leaning more on one side, what is going to happen is more of his one hand gesture will be visible. Now, if you start deciphering that he's not using both his hands, so he's being controlled, that could be because he just likes to lean in. Like I have a tendency to lean onto this side, so that could be one reason. Another which I can see in the video right away is that shawl is there. So he's trying to put that shawl up and he's falling down, he's again putting it up. So maybe just to hold it, he's put his one arm, the left arm, very close to his body. Now if you start deciphering that he is seating that tight, it could be for two reasons. Either he's watching what he's saying, but a more plausible reason here could be that he's just holding that bit in place, right? Coming to the next one. So he's using these kind of hand gestures. These are called what we call as differentiators. Again, name is not important. What it means is in front of a speaker, usually those who explain a lot visually, we divide this space into different sections. Okay, so when I'm talking to you, if I want to reduce the number of words I say, this visual space will help me do that. How do I do that? I will probably categorize one thing here, another one could be here, and the third one could be here. So how he is doing it is one is here, the other one is here. So when he's talking about one particular era, he's going here, and the other one he is going to the other space, right? So now what can happen is when you already divided it into two zones, whenever you want to refer to one era, you just point there and your audience will get it. Like again, next time also he points in both the directions, which means that right now I'm referring to both of these together. So that is how using the right hand gestures are what we call as illustrators, right? So they help you to explain more, illustrate more what you are saying. So that's how he's using his hand. Then there is looking down and he's not maintaining eye contact. Now people might think that he doesn't want to talk to this person, but a lot of us naturally look down when we are trying to focus on what that other one is saying. So immediately when he's looking down, I think he's just looking back. So that means just a momentary gathering of thoughts or just focusing on what the person is saying, Nikhil is saying, and then going back to him when he's done. And Nikhil, for that matter, when he's playing around with that pencil, you might feel he's just playing around. But it could also be that either he's thinking what the answer could be coming, so a little bit of anticipation, कि मैंने अपना question पूछ लिया, अब मोदी जी बोलेंगे क्या? Or it could also be that just being face to face, they are seated face to face. So it's a little confrontational, especially when in your head that power difference is a lot. It could also be that. So different reasons, but those are some of the signals that one must be able to observe and understand why they are there.
Wow.
He's also using palms down, Modi ji, right?
Yeah.
So that's also coming from a position of leadership or authority, that I know what I'm talking about. But very quickly, I think he just corrects it into more of a neutral kind of hand gesture.
Correct. Great. There's another one. This is of more different personality that I would try to put up. More calm, more composed. A leadership role, but not dominating, which is MS Dhoni's interview. Just give me 1 second.
It's a way to play cricket. Some people want to play aggressive cricket. Some people want to play authentic cricket. A lot of that depends on the kind of team you have got, whether they can change the way they play that cricket. Is something that is very important. Not if there's something that can be done, not everyone can do it. Like let's say somebody like a Bumrah, he can bowl 6 Yorkers. Imagine somebody who's not able to do that. If you still ask him, he may improve over a period of time, but he may end up giving a lot of runs till that point. So what is important is to realize the strength of your team, and according to the strength of the team, you decide which is the way you want to play cricket. Maybe you want to change the way you play cricket, but it takes time. It doesn't happen that overnight you decide, "Acha, kal se hum aisa karenge." It doesn't happen. So you need to give time to individuals because they have played maybe 10, 12, 15 years of cricket since they started, and they have a certain way of playing cricket. So you need to give them that time to change the way they play their cricket.
Okay, so I think we can. So a few things. One is he's keeping his hand a lot away from his body, right? It could just be coming from the fact that on the field he's the person. So that dominance could be there. Okay. Another one is he's holding mic in one hand, which means that other hand has to do all the effort in case he uses both his hands. Now, I don't recollect most of his, I have not watched his interviews before. So you can go back and check. That's called comparing with what is his baseline or normal behavior. Okay. Like if you watched his media interviews after some match, and you saw that he generally uses both his hands, and today he's having a mic in hand and the other hand is only free to talk, then maybe when he's using too many hand gestures or moving them a little too much, it could be that he's trying to compensate for not having that hand free. Here in his case, what he's doing is he's overcompensating with his neck and his head. Like you see a lot of head movements going like that, right? It's not that he is out of control. It's just that that hand is not free. So he's trying to nod a lot with that hand. Another thing is he's, nodding a lot in the first part that we saw. Now, when to put that into perspective, you will have to see the other people around him. Now, the one or two who are put into focus, they are listening so intently that they are not moving, they are not nodding back. So that back channeling is not coming. Now, as a speaker, I will continue till I get some back channeling from you. If I feel that I don't know whether you're listening, not listening, or I want to ensure that you are with me, I will try and do it in different ways. Maybe I will lean forward. Maybe I will take a pause. In his case, what he's doing, and I've seen this more in Indians than in others, is we tend to keep nodding aage piche, right? It's like I'm asking you also to nod back with me. So I'm overcompensating by nodding so much that you will mimic me, because as people in a conversation, we tend to somewhere pick up or mimic the other person. So that's, I don't think he's conscious about it, but that's something that he's, doing at a point. Then there is a point where he did that to his nose. Okay. So this is a point where he's taking a pause. If you listen to also what he's saying, there's a lot of words that are not required. They are all filler words. It's like he's trying to gather his thoughts. Maybe he's just trying to think of the right example, or trying to see how he can relate what he's talking to the audience in front of him. It could be either. Or maybe he's just being watchful. Kiska example use karna hai, right? Because there can be some politics going on which we don't know about. It can be any of these. I'm not saying ek hi hoga, but what we do get to know is that is the point where he feels the need to comfort himself, which is why that hand blocks the face. See, when a hand is blocking a hand, not in the region right in front of you, it has a little different significance than when it is right in front of you. This is a little higher in terms of visibility area. So maybe the kind of anxiousness that one is feeling when they are using the face to indicate any kind of self-comforting, it's a little higher than when you're using other parts of the body, especially the hands. Feet is different. We don't go into feet, but just comparing between the face and the hands. So to decipher it, he is very dominant and authoritative when he's talking. That's why you even see the pointed finger coming up, the hands going down, things like that. Taking up a lot of space, feeling relaxed because the feet are down and upwards. So, he's really opening up. You wouldn't be able to sit like that unless you were really comfortable in the position.
He's also having crossed legs.
Yeah, but the whole body is open and relaxed.
Okay.
So cross legs again, a lot of times it's not taken in the right connotation.
Okay.
Right? So if I have my feet crossed, but my entire body and my feet, everything is pointing towards you, I am in the conversation with you.
Okay.
But if I were seated like that, then this becomes like a cross foot between you and me. So there are a lot of these examples again from the well-known politicians where you will see upper part of the body going in one direction, lower part of the body in another direction. So that times feet pointing becomes something you watch. But when the entire body is so open and relaxed, you don't need to worry much about the feet there. So he is relaxed. He is talking at a point where he's thinking a lot. He's just trying to gather his thoughts and go on. But otherwise, it's just a natural conversation that's happening.
Just like he's straight, cool and calm and composed.
Yeah, you could say that.
So now we have approval from body language expert as well that MS Dhoni is cool and composed.
Oh, I think I am not the person to put that stamp. He's proved it enough. So.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So moving towards the end notes, almost finishing the episode. Before we end this, what is the most surprising thing that you have learned about body language so far? If you want to pick out one thing.
I think it's just that the human body is just too amazing. I mean, the more you know about the body, the more there is to know about it. Today, I have read so many books and, I would feel, I have read everything in the dictionary of body language. I will open the same books again and I will gather, these are things maybe I have, not seen as much. There are people who spend their life studying human body. You should really just, read their work. Joe Navarro is one of them. Desmond Morris is another person I really look up to and admire. You pick up any of his books, you go through them and you will see how much is there about body language to know. Right? You forget culture. You forget the fact that, India mein thode hand gestures hote hain, jo iska meaning ye, uska meaning ye, all that, or head nodding, all that. You put it on the side. Even then, there is so much to the human body. That being said, there is no one thing that works everywhere. The same thing that could make one person, or could be one person's advantage, could be another person's disadvantage, or for the same person in a situation it could be an advantage, in another situation it could really work against him. So being adaptable is what is required. So in the beginning I also was in the same what should we say, line of thought that yes, this is what it means, this is what the other one means. But once you start understanding different contexts, you start understanding that body language could have, I might know just 10 things about body language, but if I'm able to put the right context around it and be able to see how it's different, the same things are different in different environments, I can become a better observer also and connect better with people around me. I think for me that has been the biggest life lesson I have learned if I talk about body language in particular. So
right. So if you guys have watched this episode until now, I'm sure that you are into body language, you are curious and intellectual enough. So if you want to just get kick-started, there is a book that inspired someone like Ms. Kathy Bhatt and myself, which is Joe Navarro's book on what every body is saying. You can go and purchase that. But even the ma'am has her courses on Udemy, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, we have our own channel as well.
They have their own channel as well. So that's the base point. If you watch this podcast until now, and if you want to scale up yourself, you want to skill up yourself in your particular category or industry, go watch that episodes of the ma'am, follow them, and at the end you can also purchase that book which I've just mentioned. But thank you so much, ma'am. This has been the longest episode on Voices of Impact so far, and the most enjoying conversation for me. Thank you so much.
It has been a pleasure, Arjun. I will only say that from the bottom of my heart because a lot depends on the host. So if you are interested, if you have the right passion and you make your guest comfortable, I think hats off to you. So, as a host, you get, I don't know, what, 20 on 10. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. That's a great compliment for me, but we all have enjoyed the episode. Thank you so much, ma'am.
See you again.
Thank you.